Welcome to Veranda IAS. In today's current affairs session, in the subject International Relations, we will be discussing about the Gilgit-Baltistan. So, the learning objective of today's LU is to explain the Gilgit-Baltistan and to analyze the Gilgit-Baltistan which is in news and why it is in news as of now, and also to examine India's stand on Gilgit-Baltistan and to discuss the history of Gilgit-Baltistan. So, moving on, so let's discuss briefly about this area in particular. So, it is one of the India's disputed region. So, it was actually a disputed region between India and Pakistan, which is located near the Kashmir Valley. So, further, it is a large swath of high altitude land in the Union Territory of Ladakh's northwestern portion. So, India consider this portion, this Gilgit-Baltistan portion, as a region which was occupied by Pakistan and which eventually belonged to the northwestern portion of Ladakh. So, India's stand is in this case with regarding to the Gilgit-Baltistan, whereas it is strategically positioned as it shares borders with Pakistan, Afghanistan and China. It is more strategic because it shares border with Pakistan, Afghanistan and also with China. So that is why it was very important strategic location. Even when we compare to the Siachen glacier, this Gilgit region is very much more significant than the Siachen glacier itself. Further, India claims the territory as a part of its former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, which existed at the time of India's entry in the country in 1947. So, during the country's partition, so in this Jammu and Kashmir was actually the state was accession given by the king of Jammu and Kashmir to India, but eventually the Pakistan had occupied this region, and from then this region became an part and parcel and was actually lying with regard to the Pakistan in this case. Further, let's analyze why this region, this Gilgit region, Gilgit-Baltistan is in news. So, in November 2020, Pakistani officials have finalized a law, the 26th Constitutional Amendment Bill, to grant Gilgit-Baltistan interim provincial status. So, till now, this region of Gilgit was not elevated to the position of province in Pakistan. Even though Pakistan controls this region, it was not elevated to the position of a provincial state. But now there has been a law which is going to grant a provincial status to this Gilgit region. Further, by altering Article 1 of the Constitution, Gilgit-Baltistan will be granted interim provincial, which is the Article 1 of Pakistan's Constitution. The provincial status will be given. In addition to the assembly, a package of amendments will be submitted to grant Gilgit-Baltistan representation in Pakistan Parliament. So till now, as this Gilgit region was not elevated to the position of a province, it was not given a representation in Parliament, in Pakistan Parliament. But now it will be given, because if it was elevated to a position of a province, then this status will be given. It also reported to include provisions of regional representation in the National Assembly and Senate. Further, let's see what is India's stand, India's reaction with regarding to the news from Pakistan's side. India has stated that Gilgit-Baltistan is an essential part of country by virtue of Jammu and Kashmir's lawful, full and irreversible admission to the Union of India in 1947. So, India reiterated its stand. India claims the entire region of the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh as its own sovereign part. So, this decision by Pakistan was seen as an against the sovereignty of an India. So, that is why India was opposing this. So, the area's strategic significance for India has increased in light of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Agreement, which commits Beijing to massive investment in the region as a part of its Belt and Road Initiative, and concerns about a two-front war following last year's standoff in eastern Ladakh. So, why this Gilgit region is very much important for India? Because the Chinese ambitious project, the Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, passes through this Gilgit area. So, the China is building a road in the sovereign part of India, which India claims without asking permission from India. So that is why India is not joining the Belt and Road Initiative. So as it affects the sovereignty of the country. Eventually, if this Gilgit-Baltistan is very important, because if India had a situation where India want to fight in both the fronts, that is in both the Pakistan side and also with regarding to the Chinese side, then this Gilgit region will be a very much important, strategically important position. So that is why India is not giving its claim over the region of Gilgit-Baltistan. Further, let's talk about the history of Gilgit-Baltistan. So what happened? So eventually we'll be seeing about the basic history. So this Gilgit region is actually different from the region of Jammu and Kashmir. So ethnically, the Kashmiris were actually different from these Gilgit people. So there were actually ethnic differences. So even at the time, Sikhs controlled this region first. When Sikhs controlled the major part of the northern provinces, the northwestern India, this region was actually controlled by Sikhs. Eventually, after the first Anglo-Sikh war, when the Sikhs lost power to British, this region was given under the control, came under the control of the Dogras, who were the ruling community, who were the rulers of Jammu and Kashmir kingdom at the time. So eventually the Dogras ruled Jammu and Kashmir, and also along with Ladakh and the entire Gilgit-Baltistan. Even at the time, the Gilgit peoples were not well enough with the Dogras, because they don't like them being ruled by Kashmiri peoples. So they were ethnically different from Kashmiris. So after that, what happened? India and Pakistan got freedom in the year 1947. So because of that, at that point of time, the king of Jammu and Kashmir, Raja Hari Singh, so what he actually decided is to remain independent of India and Pakistan. But this Pakistan was not willing to this. So the Pakistan sponsored the rebels. So the rebels entered into this Gilgit region. So eventually there was a British force which was present in the Gilgit region. They were actually the Gilgit scouts. So the Gilgit scouts, which were actually under the imperial army, they revolted under the leadership of a commander called as William Brown. So eventually they revolted and captured the entire part of the Gilgit and also the Baltistan region. So the entire Gilgit and the Baltistan region was captured, and they also began to further intrude into Kargil and subsequent Ladakh region, Skardu. So these kind of region were actually captured by these revolts, along with the Pashtun tribes, who were actually supported by the Pakistan. So because of that, sensing the danger from the Pashtun tribes and with the Gilgit Scots, what Raja Hari Singh did is that he came with an agreement to cede the accession of J and K, Jammu and Kashmir, to India, so that Indian army can help. So eventually Indian army got into the action, and eventually they had recaptured this Ladakh area and the Kargil area from these revolutionaries, from these mutineers. So eventually, but till then the Gilgit-Baltistan was remained in the hands of the Gilgit scouts and the Pashtun tribes. Eventually, the UN intervened because of India's request, and ceasefire agreement was signed, so that India and Pakistan was divided with the line of control. So because of that, from that day itself, the Gilgit was remained as a part of an Pakistan, whereas India was claiming Gilgit as its own, whereas Pakistan is claiming the entire Kashmir Valley as its own. So that is the thing which is happening. So that is the brief history about Gilgit-Baltistan. The Gilgit-Baltistan is strategically significant due to its location between Himalayan and Karakoram mountain range and its proximity to Afghanistan, China, India and Pakistan, as we discussed before. Occupied by Pakistan and claimed by India, the territory at northernmost tip of Kashmir and encompassing sections of Ladakh in gaining importance in the region's state's security calculation. So it was occupied by Pakistan and it was claimed by India. So Gilgit was a part of a princely state of Jammu and Kashmir but was directly administered by the British. So before the time of independence, it was administered by British, who had leased it from the Hari Singh, the territory's Hindu king. So we all know that Hari Singh is an Hindu king, whereas the region of Kashmir is dominated by Muslim population. So that is why the problem is more significant. So when Hari Singh acceded the India on 26 October 1947, the Gilgit Scouts revolted under the leadership of William Brown. The Gilgit Scouts actually revolted. Further, the Gilgit Scouts advanced to seize Baltistan, which was then a part of Ladakh, and took Skardu, Kargil, Dras. In August 1948, after the accession, the Indian soldiers recaptured the Kargil and Dras in subsequent engagements, whereas the Skardu remained and Baltistan remained with the Pakistan because of the ceasefire agreement. In November 1, 1947, a political organization known as Revolutionary Council of Gilgit-Baltistan declared the state of Gilgit-Baltistan independent. So on 15th November 1947, it proclaimed its accession to Pakistan. So first, it's initially it's actually given independence to its own. So it's declared independence for its own as a separate state. But following it, it had proclaimed its accession to Pakistan, which acknowledged it only in terms of complete administrative authority. Further, Pakistan adopted its first full-fledged civilian constitution in 1974 with Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as its 4 provinces. So Gilgit was at the time when constitution was formed, Gilgit was not actually elevated to a position of province. Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan were not elevated to the level of provinces, as we discussed before. So that's all with regarding to this LU. Now Pakistan is actually planning to elevate the Gilgit region to as a province. So in this LU we have seen about the Gilgit-Baltistan and why this Gilgit-Baltistan is in news, and also India's stand on this Gilgit-Baltistan, and also the history of Gilgit-Baltistan. So that's all with regarding to this LU, and have a nice day. Thank you.